And in a landmark decision, Israel's Supreme Court has ruled that ultra-Orthodox Jews must be conscripted into the military, ending a nearly 80-year-long exemption. Now, it is a popular decision in a country where almost every other Jewish Israeli faces the draft, but it is stoking tensions both in society and within the coalition government. DW's Fanny Facsar reports from Jerusalem.
When you turn 18 in Israel, you have to report here, a conscription center. Military service is mandatory for most men and women in the country. Most adults have to serve in the military for up to 30 months. There are various exemptions, like for ultra-Orthodox Jews who do not need to report here, but that's about to change. The Supreme Court has just ruled against a decades-old exemption. Most people agree. The majority of Israelis say it's time to reduce exemptions and for the ultra-Orthodox community to do more. They hope this would reduce the burden on everyone else.
I'm a reservist. I can't do 4 months of reserve service minimum. It's impossible, and that's happening.
Massive protests against the conscription of ultra-Orthodox Jews have been turning violent in Jerusalem. To them, enlistment means a secular way of life, contradicting their religious commitments. The Supreme Court ruling puts the government in a dilemma. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ultra-Orthodox coalition partners have threatened to quit his government if their community is conscripted. And yet, society at large, most voters and the opposition parties would endorse such a change.
Everyone has to be recruited to the army. If before it was a moral principle, now it is an existential imperative. The recruitment bill is a great test for the coalition, because if it continues to prioritise keeping the coalition together over the needs of the army, the government may collapse.
This is Mea Shearim, one of Jerusalem's ultra-Orthodox neighbourhoods. It's rare to get permission to film here. We are just a few kilometers from Parliament, but a world away from that secular life. The days here are focused on closely following Jewish religious law, traditions, and prayer. It's how more than 1 million Israelis live, around 13% of the population. Yudel Hirsch wants to keep it that way. He's been at every protest against Orthodox conscription, he says, and reckons there's no way the government could enforce it.
They can impose criminal sanctions on people, but they are not going to go into neighbourhoods. They don't have enough room in prisons now. With 60,000 yeshiva students ready to go to jail, you can shut down the state.
That 60,000 he mentioned are conscription-aged ultra-Orthodox men. 3,000 of them should be drafted immediately, according to the Attorney General. But will they? Avi Sagi is an academic with a focus on Israeli military ethics. He says nothing will happen during the current summer recess, but the government coalition won't be able to delay the issue much longer than that.
This may lead sooner or later to elections. We are at the cusp of a total change of the societal balance of power in Israel. What used to be will no longer be able to pass, is my estimation, because Israeli society got on its back feet and said, enough is enough. We cannot live this way.
Here in Mea Shearim, Yudel Hirsch says Jewish religious law is incompatible with fighting for the secular Israel state. He says men here will not do that, no matter the consequences for them or the country.
Let's speak to Fanny Facsar, who filed that report. Fanny, I understand conscription for the ultra-Orthodox, this has been an issue for decades, right? So why wasn't this solved long ago, and why would you say it is now becoming such a major issue?
That's because these exemptions have been pretty much part of, one can say, the political DNA of Israel. One can go back all the way to the first Prime Minister, Ben-Gurion, who said these exemptions are important so that the ultra-Orthodox Jews can actually devote themselves to religious studies, making sure they protect the traditions that have been nearly wiped out during the Holocaust. So that's been the status quo during a time nearly 8 decades ago when the ultra-Orthodox community was much smaller than it is now. We are no longer speaking about a few hundred students, but tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox students of conscription age. And the voices of those people who want them to be enlisted have grown louder and louder with every war that Israel faced in its history, and especially since October 7th. Now, the ball is in the court of the parliament, of the Knesset. They need to come up with some bill that, again, complies with the ruling of the Supreme Court. But the question is, will the ultra-Orthodox Jews comply with that bill if that's going to be really the case to enforce ultra-Orthodox Jews? And we're not speaking just about a few hundred, few thousand, but possibly about the 60,000 that are of the conscription age.
You've been speaking to many people as part of your reporting. Do you think they'll comply? What kind of reaction might we see?
It's really interesting going to this ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, really just a few hundred meters from our studio, but it's really worlds apart from so many other parts of this city. And being there and being able to film was very rare, let alone speaking as a woman to ultra-Orthodox men. And they told me, like we have heard before at the protests, that they rather go to jail, they rather even die than fighting Palestinians, they say, because this is not the war that they have signed up for, and this is not the state that they accept. They do not accept Israel as a state, the institutions that come with it, the bills and the rules that come with it. So what's expected to happen is obviously more protests, but if you go to Jerusalem, go outside, you will see protests nearly every day against the government. Ultra-Orthodox Jews protesting the government because of the possible conscription bill is one thing. People are taking to the street all together in significant majority right now to make sure that this war comes to an end, that there's some truce, but also that the hostages are being released. And we are hearing really cautious diplomatic efforts here, some sort of a revival actually of diplomatic efforts between Hamas militants and Israel for the very first time again since December, when there was a 1 week of truce, possibly mediated by Qatar and Egypt, trying to come to terms to a framework of some truce. But that's not going to take away the overall sentiment of Israelis, and that is that they will have to continue defend themselves against Hamas militants, against Hezbollah militants, a possible multi-front war. And they will need more people as a result to sign up and serve.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is Fanny Facsar for us in Jerusalem.